I came back a few days later than I'd intended, but I'm recording more videos on how to make a fursuit. And my plan with this is basically just to go through step by step every single detail of what you need to know to make a fursuit, so that if you follow along at home, you just sort of put the video on and do what I'm doing as it runs. You can make your own. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes. The plan is just to try and cover every single detail continually, rather than kind of mix and match and do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So, for the first part, in the past I've spoken to other fursuit makers, and I've said to them, look, what do you think is the easiest thing to learn when you're first making any kind of fursuit parts? And there's a bit of a disagreement, because I think the majority tend to say the easiest way to start is to make a tail, because it's such a relatively simple shape. And I kind of disagree a little bit on that, because I mean tails are simple to make, but you have additional steps with them. So once you've cut it out and sewn it up, you've got to fill it with the stuffing. You've got to see, normally when you make fursuit parts, you do it inside out so that the fur is out of the way, and you sew on the backing material, and you make it inside out, and then when it's done, you flip it over. Right? With a tail, you can't quite do that because it's completely self-contained. So at least the last little bit of it you have to sew from the wrong side, and then when that's done, you need to put the belt loops on so you can attach it to your belt and put it on your clothes. So there's extra little complications. And so my opinion is that the easiest place to start for your first piece of a fursuit is with the hands, because realistically all you need to do is get a bit of fur, you draw around your hand, you cut it out, and then you sew two of those together, begin at one end, finish at the other, and it's done. So that's literally, it's a two-step process. You cut and you sew. Obviously there are much more complicated ways of doing it. You can do multiple colours, you can do paw pads, you can do claws, you can put little squeakers inside so that when you high-five someone, it makes a squeaking sound. You get lots that have additional foam and stuffing around the fingers, so you get these plump, round fingers instead. All kinds of extra levels of complication you can add, but at the most basic, it is just a bunch of hand-shaped pieces of fabric. So that's what I'm going to make today. All you do, you grab a pen, you grab a hand, and then you just start tracing around. You'll try and get the angle on it right so that the wrist is facing the right way here. Spread your fingers as wide as you can. Okay, and you just sort of go like this. And the aim is to try and get basically as much fabric in a hand shape as you can, because that way you've got a bit of spare material to work with. If you do it too close to the shape of your fingers, then every little mistake might mean you have to throw the whole thing away and start over. So yeah, you just sort of draw it around your hand, somewhat like this, a little bit down the wrist. And that's where you start. Now the way I like to do it, just going to these a little bit so they're more evenly spaced. The way I like to do it is to just kind of go sort of like this. Okay. Rounded paw shape that you get there. And what you can then do is you can just sort of adjust the outlines a little bit here and there so that they fit better with that shape, you see. Now you might notice I'm doing this with leftover material from a previous thing that I was making. You know, if you've got plenty of space left, you can reuse it for something else. That's no problem. But hopefully, if you're just starting out and making your first fursuit, unless you're getting given a load of leftover stuff from someone else that they don't need anymore, you know, you'd have a nice, big, nice, neat, perfect rectangle that you can work from. You just sort of set up in the corner and work your way further and further in, and eventually you'll end up with it looking a bit like this. But when you're first starting out, nice big couple of metre rectangle of fur, fresh and new and not covered in these little creases from where it's been folded in a box for a bit. And then you cut it out. And the thing to make sure of, I probably should have mentioned that before I told you to start drawing, is to make sure the fur is going the right way, which is this way, towards the fingertips. If it's ever a little bit unsure, what you can do, because sometimes, I mean, this material, it's pretty easy to see that it's all brushing that way, but sometimes you get stuff and it's a little bit kind of more like this, and it goes all over, and you're not entirely sure which way it's meant to be going. You can check along the edge here. I'm not sure how well it shows up on the camera, but there's just like a little thin strip here that's a bit rougher, little bit. That's why when they produce it in the machines, it comes out in a big long roll of it, and it just sort of rolls out the machine, and both of the sides of it is a little bit rough and uneven as it goes. And yeah, you can tell by looking at where that side of it is. That's going sideways, and it's either going this way or that way. So that then helps you to determine which direction you should be brushing the fur in. But with this, it's pretty easy to see it goes that way, up to the fingertips. And then, yep, we just cut it out. And of course, as we do this, you're remembering what I said last time about leaving a little bit of extra around the outlines. And about making sure that you're sliding the scissors gently and at a bit of an angle so that you're not cutting too much of the actual fluff. Okay. And what you're wanting to do here is to make sure that each of the fingers is quite thick and chunky, because it's not going to be flat, it's going to curve around, and so you're actually getting, for each of these you need it to be half of around from here to there, basically. So it's a little bit wider than your actual fingers, plus of course a little bit of extra that you need around the edges for the stitches. So you want some nice thick chunky fingers to start off with, and you will get thinner as you make the thing. And there we go. As promised, all the fur comes to the end of the fingertips, and none of it's been cut off as I go around it with the scissors. So we've got this nice fluffy. I mean, with the hands, what you might end up wanting to do, of course, is to use a shorter bit of fur, something that doesn't quite go that fluffy at the fingertips, or you could get a shaver and shave it down a bit shorter. But like I said, this is the most simple and basic, bare minimum amount of work you need to do for any bit of fursuit. So I'm going to use the material I have to hand and not do anything complicated or fancy with it. So you cut out your hand, right? Then what do? Do you put your hand down again and trace over? Do you put your right hand down and try and... Now, the easy thing to do, you just flip this over and you copy it. You just go around all the edges, and like I said, just try and avoid using this slightly rough bit on the edge here. You can just sort of put that there and trace around, and you'll notice as I'm doing this that it's a bit easier to do this against the backing material. If it was the other way up and I was trying to trace around on where all the fur is, it does get a little bit hard. If I put it like this and try and draw here, you can see the fabrics aren't quite touching. It gets a bit awkward. So what you do is you make, try and line it back up to the line that I drew a moment ago. There you go, nice and neat. So what you do for a pair of hands, right, if you do the original, you make 2 copies of it, both facing the opposite way, and then you cut one of those out and you make a copy of that facing the opposite way, then puts it back to the same way around as the original. And each time you copy, there's a slight chance you'll get it the tiniest bit wrong, so where possible just keep reusing the first one you did, rather than copy and then flip it over and copy again and then flip the next one over, and flip the third one over to make the fourth, and so on. You'll just add in a couple of millimeters of just accidentally in slightly the wrong size or shape as you go. And as you can see, it's a little bit awkward in around the fingertips feathers on this fluffing way, but you just kind of pull it out, trace around here, and eventually you come back to the beginning, and then you just go like this, and inside of here, and there, and finally in here. There we go. When I lift that up, you should have an exact copy of the hand, but facing the other way. And it's obviously you have to really spread your fingers out wide to fit them in. That will all squeeze together when it's done. It'll kind of be sort of like that shape when I finish sewing it up. But there you go, and then you just make another copy of that and cut this one out, flip it over, make a fourth one, and you'll have two facing one way, two facing the other way. It's slightly diagonal, isn't it? That doesn't hugely matter. I mean, if the fur goes this way or that way, no one's really going to notice that very slight difference. And this time, what you need to do, you don't leave a gap around it, because you already did that when you measured out the first one. And this time, you need to cut just inside the line. Slide the scissors gently between the fur. At a nice flat angle relative to the fabric, so that you're getting away to your edge of it. If you're using a really short fur to make the hands, that's slightly less of an issue, but it doesn't go away entirely. And around the fingertips in particular, because you've got this material and that material touching each other there. So if you do accidentally trim a little bit off here, it's going to be more noticeable than it would be on other parts of it. So you need to be really extra careful that you get it just right. Okay. And then down between the fingers. Oops. See, that's me trying to do it a bit too quickly for you there. I accidentally trimmed a bit of the fur off of this one. That's exactly what you want to try not to do. Okay. So you can see that it shows up more on this one because it's the kind of fur that's a slightly darker colour underneath, and then it gets lighter as it goes along. So yeah, you can really definitely see that. Let's hope it's less noticeable when I finish sewing it up. Anyway, so I'm just going to make one of these for you today, because otherwise it's like an hour and a half of work. So what you do then is you put them back to back. So you put the fur on the inside and the packing layer on the outside, like this. And you can see, they match up. Of course, if I trace one of them off the other, they should be basically identical, except the opposite way around. And then you just sew them together. And presumably you watched the previous video that I did in which I explained how to sew. Here, thread. One bit of sewing thread, cut off there, thread into the needle, somewhat like that. You see, I'm sure you absolutely do not see on the camera that tiny fraction of a millimetre bit of thread and hole in the needle. But if you could see, you would see it. And then knot the end so that the needle stays on. I could try to teach how to thread a needle, but to be honest, I'm not entirely sure. It's just something I've done so many times that it's now easy to do, but I can't really remember how I figured it out when I was first learning. It's basically just a case of you need to look really, really closely in order to see the tiny, tiny things. And then you just kind of start sewing. In there, out there. Reminds me of the first time I tried to do a bit of fursuit making. Brand new, just figuring it out. Barely knew any of what I was doing. So I'm going, okay, I know how to stitch, but how do I stop the sewing thread from pulling out at the end of the line? So what I did is I got a bit of glue and I just dribbled glue all around here so that the thread would stay in place. Yeah, it's not quite how you meant to do it. It worked, it absolutely did work. But no. You can tie a little knot in the end of it. A couple of stitches and knot them together and it'll stay nice and secure. Okay. And that's just, that's how it goes. You just stitch endlessly along this outline here, one after another. Imagine this is the point where people are going to start skipping ahead in the video, but it does get a bit repetitive. Normally what I tend to do when I'm sewing is I'll set aside 3 hours of the day and I'll just sit here for 3 hours stitching. Any longer than that and it gets a bit frustrating. But no, it's a nice, calm, relaxing thing to do. And my partner keeps telling me I should maybe put a TV show on in the background while I'm doing something, but no, I reckon that would be too much of a distraction, and at this point I'm just used to spending multiple hours a week sitting with a needle and a thread and a bit of fabric doing a lot of stitching. Typically, for a bit of thread this long, it takes me 5 to 10 minutes to use it all up, depending on if there's any little complex details of the seam. For example, with this one, I'm going to have to go up and down each of the fingers to make sure I get every part of it lined up exactly right. It will take a bit longer than that. hopefully I'm still in frame of the camera here. We're just going to tuck the fluff. What I could do with is maybe one of those camera setups where you've got the laptop open, streaming what's coming up on the camera, so that I can view for myself what it is that's going on the other side, because obviously I can't see the camera from here. But I don't know how to set something like that up. It's probably going to take me like 10 minutes to figure out if I ever do look into it, but Another little bit of advice that I will give to people that are trying to get their first bit of fursuit making done, and obviously if it's your first time it's not going to look perfect, but you want it to be the best it can be. As you go around the curves of the fingertips and down here at the bottom where the fingers join, you need to be careful to make sure you're doing quite a lot of very small stitches. On the long straight bits you can do slightly larger stitches and it doesn't really show up so much, but on the tight curve it is a bit more noticeable. And you don't want to have people's fingertips accidentally poking out through a hole in the tip of the paw. So you do a few more but smaller stitches just to those points. Okay. And I mentioned that you could do more complex kinds of paws rather than just this, and that's if you're doing a different colour or a different pattern. For example, if you want to have caught on something there, give it a good tug, pull it through. If you wanted to have like 2 different colours of paws, then you can. One thing that would probably help is if you traced around your hand onto a bit of card and then use that as a template, because then you can put it down on different fur fabrics and you can make one side of the hand, like the left side of the hand out of one colour and the right side out of another colour. For example, you could just kind of have just patterns and lines through it, and you can do multiple different colours, or you can do spots or stripes or whatever. And all you need to do then is make more pieces of fabric and spend more time sewing up around the edges. And then eventually you get to the point where you run out of thread and you have to stop. I recommend stopping when you've got a little bit left, because that way then you can thread it through there, tie it up, knot, put it through there again, tie another knot. And you've only got like 3 or 4 millimeters of thread left. It gets a bit awkward to do that at the end. Just tie these together just to make it nice and secure. Trim the end off. I should trim the other end off as well. I keep forgetting to do that, and then when I've finished I have to go back through and find all the end bits and trim them off. There it is. And then you just do it again. Now I've got a bit of thread. see, you just kind of put the thread. If you go really, really close so you can see it, and it's easier, you put the thread through the needle. Eventually, it may take multiple attempts like that one did. Let's clean all the bits of fluff off, because if you get a little bit of fluff caught on the sewing thread while you're stitching it, then it's going to make the thread slightly harder to pull through the holes in the fabric, and it'll get caught on something and it'll all get tangled up and it'll end up in a horrible mess, and then you have to cut that bit of thread off and start over again, and you don't want that. So then, yeah, just tuck the fluff inside. You want as much as possible all of the fur to be on the inside, which when you flip it around becomes of course the outside. And then we just keep doing this for another time around. Okay. And to be honest, this may take a little bit of trial and error to get the shapes and sizes exactly right. And getting the wrist the correct thickness so that your hand can still squeeze in through the opening, but it's not too loose around your arms. Once you get it pulled on, making sure that the fingers are the right length, because you could have, if you're doing, when I was tracing around my hand and I was saying, you want to have lots of extra material in between the fingers, so that when I'm doing, for example, this bit here, where obviously you can see that we've lost that part, and it's now a bit thinner, and when you're wearing it, it squeezes in and makes it even more thinner. And you do similar at the top here as well. And you might find the first time you make a hand that you accidentally make the fingers a little too long, or a little too short, I guess. So what might help, if you're concerned about that, would be to make, to trace out the shape that you want on the fabric, but only cut the first two pieces out, so you can make one hand and then try it on, and if it doesn't quite fit right, you can adjust the other half before you cut it out. That way you're only having to replace one of the two. But yeah, they could quite easily be a little bit of trial and error and giving it the exact right shape and size. And of course, what you can then do, and what I used to do and probably should go back to doing, like I mentioned, is to trace around a bit of card first. Oh yeah, that'll happen. Trace around a little bit of card and then use that to copy onto the fur, rather than putting your hand directly on the fabric. That way, if you get it right, you can then reuse that bit of card for the next pair you make. Of course, it doesn't quite work if you're making them for loads of different people, because everyone's hands are a slightly different size. And exactly how to accommodate for that in commissions is still a little bit it's not quite as refined as some other aspects of commission making. I've had, for example, people send me photos of their hands and say this is how big and what shape my hand is. Obviously it depends what size screen it's displaying on as to what size it is. So it's a bit kind of, but at least that way you get an idea of how wide their fingers are. Because like, apparently my fingers are unusually narrow. So I have a slightly longer and thinner hand than most people. So if I make all of the hands that I make based off my own measurements, they're not going to fit everyone. So once you start making stuff for random strangers on the internet, that's something you need to learn to accommodate for. So I definitely recommend, first time you make a hand paw, make it for yourself, because you can just measure your own hand. It's nice and easy that way. Nearly there. Now I also mentioned earlier when I was saying that you could add a bunch of extra complications into making the hand. Oh, that's the end of that. Tie this up at the end. So you go under the last stitch, and then you take the back of the needle through the loop. Nice and easy. Do it a couple of times, maybe 3 times, if you want to make extra sure it's not coming undone. I'm going to tie these in a knot. I don't know if that does anything to help, but it's not going to make it any worse. And then you can see, obviously, I'm now 3.5 out of 5 fingers in. And we'll see if this last bit of thread is enough to finish it off. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It always seems to annoyingly just vary by like an inch or 2 at the end. So sometimes it'll be just the tiniest couple of stitches too short, and sometimes it's just barely enough. We'll see which way it goes this time. And yeah, just the end of that one loop of thread, one needle, a couple more fingers to stitch up. So where was I? Oh yeah, I was saying about if you want to make the paws look a little bit nicer and a bit less plain, what you might want to do is add the paw pads to the fingertips and across the palm, like just a little bit here, and the way you'd want to do that is you need to sew them on before you get to this stage, because trying to sew onto this material without sticking it to this side here, that's going to be a bit of a mess. So you sew them on first, and then you attach the two bits back to back like this. Okay, I mean that's pretty obvious, isn't it? But I did say, didn't I, Fursuit Making for absolute beginners. So yeah, I'm going to go over stuff that's really obvious, such as how to draw around your own hand. Through there, back through there, through there, back a little way, and just keep going along. Yep. Surprisingly, when you're making something like this, big loops of thread keep getting tangled around all of these various different fingertips you've got sticking out everywhere. And if you're making a large flat piece for a fursuit, maybe like part of the body, that's not nearly so much of an issue, but there's just so many more things for it to catch on while you're working over the hands. And of course, you'll also see quite a lot of people will make fursuit hands with only 4 fingers instead of 5, make it more cartoony like. And in that case, it's basically the same thing, but you don't need to be quite as careful about making sure all of your fingers are spread really wide, because there's fewer of them, so there's less urgency on making sure that you maximise the use of material. And so in that case, what you want to do is just kind of draw around the palm of the hand and the thumb, and kind of mark around roughly how far up the fingertips go, and then you can just kind of freehand draw the 3 remaining fingers that you need to fill in that. And the thing with doing that is, obviously in that case, when you're wearing the fursuit parts, 2 of your fingers go in the same hole, so you need to make sure that you leave at least one of them a little bit wider so you can squeeze 2 fingers in. And you'd want to do that just at the base here. I mean, this part up here, that's plenty wide enough for 2 fingers. This bit here, and obviously if you're dividing this into thirds, it becomes quite a bit easier to do, because you can just sort of end one of them here and one of them there, and that's nice and easy. Yeah, not a lot to worry about with it. But like I say, it might take a little bit of trial and error. First time you do it, you might make the fingers slightly the wrong length, or a little bit too wide, accidentally make one of them a lot thinner than the other 2, that kind of thing. Don't worry too much about that. Anyway, if it goes wrong, you can try it again. This is why I mentioned in the previous video that the first few things you make, you might want to get not the fanciest, most premium material to work from. But also don't get the cheapest, because that way, when it does work, you don't have something that's really obviously cheap, low quality fabric. And there we go. This is one of the hands made. And then, obviously you don't wear it like this, you need to flip it around the other way. You kind of squeeze the finger in through the holes here. There's these bits where the fingers join onto the palm, that's the narrowest, the tightest bit. It's going to be the hardest for you to flip around the other way. So, the easiest way to do it is to tackle that first. Just kind of shove the fingers in through those little holes there, right? And then you flip it around, and one by one pop out each of these fingers. There we go. There we go. That's a lot of fluff. Yeah, a lot of fluff coming off of this. Easiest way to make sure you've got all of the last little bits of the fingertips done is just to put it on over your hand. And then we have a look and see, where was that bit that I accidentally shaved out there? There we go. Yeah, you can just about see where I accidentally cut too much fur off there. It's just a little bit shorter. It's not massively noticeable, but you still want to try and avoid doing that. And then get a brush and brush over each of the seams. Try and make sure that any bits of fur that are caught in those seams come out. Any bits that came loose when you were cutting it up. Yeah, that's a lot of fluff coming off of there. And anyway, yep. So there you go. One hand. Once you know what you're doing, it takes basically half an hour to make each one, so that's an hour for a pair of them, maybe an hour and a half. So hopefully next time when I record a nice video, you'll have gone away and made a pair of hand paws yourself, and you can post in the comments and say, hey, look at the thing I made. Anyway, I should clean this up because everything is covered in so much fluff, as it basically always is whenever I make anything like